So we have the settings view controller essentially working. We can make all these changes and toggle the buttons and turn off notifications and everything else. But notice what happens when I go away from the settings view controller and then recreate it again. It's reset to all the defaults. I need to save and restore my settings. Now we can use a thing called user defaults. And user defaults will let us, it's a key value store that iOS provides for us. And so we can associate keys with values. And so these 5 properties that we have right here that we're initializing based on these default values, we can save them to user defaults and load them from user defaults when we come back. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start by declaring a structure that's going to give us all of the keys that we're going to use as keys for these various settings here. So private enum now, we're going to call this enum settings, and I have 5 different cases, and the cases will have the same names as these variables here. So notifications on, oops, try this again, and then, you know what, I'm just going to start typing. It'll be faster if I keep my fingers on the keyboard. Hour index, minutes index, is AM, and notify days. Those are the things that we need to store. Now, it's a key value store, and an enumerated type typically uses an int as its basis. So this would probably be the value 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I want this to be string-based instead because that's how user defaults works. It stores strings as its keys. And so now by declaring that this enumeration is based on the string type, now it's going to generate 5 different cases that are just unique strings. Okay, so having done that much, now let's see. Next bit. So we had a needs work in here. There it is. Save settings. Needs work, we've got to do it. And by the way, there's another one that's missing, and that's private restore settings. And we also need to program that one up. We'll come back to that in just a second here. But we want to call it here when we load the view for the first time. All right, so to save settings, we've got to go get user defaults. So we're going to let defaults equal, defaults equal user defaults dot, and now there will be, see, there's a singleton associated with the user defaults class. So this is much like the singleton pattern that I've already shown you. And so we get the standard user defaults structure, and now we can call setters and getters on that standard thing. So we're going to do defaults.set, and you see here it takes a bunch of different possibilities. I guess I lied to you before. I could have, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong, I didn't lie to you. The keys are all strings over here on the right. But you can attach any kind of value that you'd like in the set. So set. The first set that we're going to do is we're going to do our notifications on. So notifications on, and for key, and the key will be settings dot notifications on. Okay, and so we're going to do that same thing. So default dot set, and now we've got our index for key settings dot our index defaults dot set minutes index for key settings dot minutes index defaults dot set, and now we have is AM. That's a Boolean, but that's okay. It's got all these overloads. Settings dot is AM. Now the more interesting one is this array. How do we do an array? Defaults dot set, and let's see here. Okay, so looking through here, I can set a URL. I can set a Boolean, double, float, int. And there's also this thing called any. Now, any represents any kind of type. And so in particular, it should be able to accept an array here. So if I say set notify days for key settings dot notify days. Now, we have an issue here. And the issue is that it's saying cannot convert value of type settings view controller dot settings to the expected argument type, which is a string. So what I need to do is I need to say, well, I don't want the actual enumeration here. I want the raw value that supports that enumeration. And so when I have an enumerated type, this is how I can get to the underlying structure. Okay, so raw value, and then finally dot raw value. Okay, so having set these 5 different properties here in the store, I'm going to say defaults.synchronize, and this is how we say to the user defaults structure, would you please write yourself out to the disk? And so that's the save side. The restore side is going to be similar. We're going to again let defaults equal user defaults dot standard. And now we're going to do the reverse. We're going to say notify actually, okay. What I want to do here is a little bit different. You remember when we were looking at this set and it said it takes an any question mark, an optional any. It could be nil going in there as far as this is concerned. So in order to unwrap that array, we have to first unpack the optional value. So we're going to do an if let. We're going to if let days equal, and now I go to defaults, and you see that there are a whole bunch of possibilities here. Well, one of them is this array of type any optional. So let's unpack that array for key, and the key is going to be settings dot notify days dot raw value. So if that's true, then I do have that array sitting in there, and I can go and retrieve all the values. And in fact, I could say, well, my notify days comes from here, from that standard defaults. And now we want to go get all the other properties too from the standard defaults, defaults dot, and now in this case I'm looking for Boolean for key settings dot notifications on dot raw value. All right, and now similarly hour index and minute index, but this time we're getting integers. So hour index equal defaults dot integer for key settings dot hour index, and minutes index equal defaults dot integer for key settings dot minutes index. And then last but not least is AM is going to be defaults dot Boolean, bool, for key settings dot is AM. All right, so what this is going to do is it's going to say, all right, let's go get the, oops, and I left off the raw value on most of this. Sorry. Okay, now, I have a problem here, and that is that I have this cannot assign value of type any array to type bool array. See, this is really a bool array, and as we saw when we looked at the definition of array, it returns an any array. Well, I think it should be Boolean values, not just any old value. So remember that we've seen a way to cast to a class. So I'm going to use the as question mark to say, well, look, let's not just see if it's not nil. Let's also at the same time see, can we turn this into an array of Boolean? Is it an array of Boolean? And now my days will have that right type of array of Boolean, and I can assign it to notify days. I think this is complete. I think we've put in all of the checks that we need here. So on the restore side, if it's the first time I ever run the app, I'm going to get back a nil for that array. And so I'm not going to try to do all of these settings here, and I'm just going to go with the default of 7 a.m. And in subsequent runs of the program, I should get back whatever's in user defaults. So we'll run. Launching, attaching, up it comes. Go to settings, and let's turn off Tuesday, Thursday, and let's make it 7:05 and say we're done. And now we come back in, and sure enough, it builds it. All right, was that just a fluke? What if I totally halt the app and we relaunch? So you see the settings are also preserved across launches. And if I turn off the notifications, that turn off gets remembered. Okay, so the save through user defaults is now working.